Tuesday, everybody, and yeah, the fun continues. So I'm really hoping today goes a little bit smoother than yesterday, because yesterday was just a classic example in trucking of when you look at something in theory and when you look at something on paper and you look at the maps and all of that good stuff and you plan out the day and you're thinking, okay, this is all very easy stuff, you know, you're just gonna leave your home park location, go to a place nearby. It's a drop and hook, drop your empty, pick up a loaded trailer, and be happily on your way down to, you know, a relatively close by destination, and do another drop and hook, and then run over to Gary, which, you know, Alsip is very close to Gary. Not, you know, it's a half hour or something like that. Just run over to Gary, grab a what do they call it? A relay trailer. So in other words, a trailer that another driver had picked up and couldn't complete. So again, it's drop and hook, grab your trailer and go. So and that trailer is going up to the outskirts of Minneapolis to Hopkins, Minnesota. So, you know, I'm looking at all this in advance and I'm thinking, oh, that's great. You know, I'll be able to get, you know, way up into Wisconsin by the end of the day. You know, I'll be up by, you know, Toma or something, and you know, make some good distance. Well, yeah, not the way yesterday went. So, you know, now you add in that the shipper overloaded the back end of the trailer, and you got to go through all of that, you know, rigmarole of, you know, going to get it scaled. Now it's heavy. Now you got to move your tandems to try and, you know, make it at least somewhat balanced to get back to the shipper and have the shipper reload it, which means they got to take all the stuff out and put it all back in, and you sit there and wait. And then you got to go rescale it again, move your tandems. You know, thankfully I didn't have to go for a second time to them. They got it reasonably okay on the first attempt of reloading the trailer. So thank God for that. You know, but then you get down to this customer, this receiver, and nice enough folks, but my gosh, you know, just a complete zoo in there. So, you know, and of course, no empty trailer, so I left Bobtail, which is no big deal, because I was going to Gary anyway, and, you know, Gary has thousands of trailers, or at least hundreds of trailers. But then, you know, I get to Gary, and the trailer that I'm supposed to pick up that should be ready to go and just grab it and go, well, you know, now it's been flagged for brakes. They had to replace a brake drum and some brake pads, apparently. And that ended up taking a while. It didn't take as long as it could have, thank God. But, you know, still, that's a good hour and a half out of my day. And so I finally got to as far as I could get to with the last 20 minutes on my clock, and that was the Petro, which is always my saving grace, that Petro in Rochelle, Illinois. You know, because I was coming in there at, you know, 8:30, 8:45, something like that at night. There's no parking anywhere at that time, so... But the Petro always has parking, so Petro and Rochelle. And so I stayed there, got up early, and came over here across the street to the Pilot, where I get better fuel discounts. And I needed a little bit of fuel, so I did that. And then I finally got to scaling this trailer because something told me it was out of whack. It didn't feel right, it didn't look right. And I didn't want to go up to the state border with Illinois and Wisconsin, and, you know, shortly after that border in Wisconsin, there's a weigh station, and there's another weigh station that greets you when you come into Minnesota. So I'm thinking, okay, I definitely have to scale this thing. So I just scaled it in the Pilot. This driver that picked it up in Indianapolis didn't scale it, didn't care, didn't look, had the trailer in the fifth hole. You could see the tires of the tandems were bulging. You could tell in the way it rode that it was heavy in the back. But, you know, there's a lot of these drivers that just don't give a shit. So he was driving around with his tandems at 37,000 pounds, which is pretty damn illegal. And, yeah. And in the state of Indiana, where consequently Schneider and a few other carriers are under the radar of the Indiana State Police for having overloaded trailers. And so the Indiana State Police has been cracking down on carriers for weights, and Schneider's one of the companies that they're targeting heavily, just because Schneider has a big presence in Indy, right? So, or in Indiana. So, naturally they're a big target, right? So this knucklehead picks up this trailer and is driving through, a good chunk of the state of Indiana with his tandems at 37,000 pounds. Idiot. So anyway, not to harp on that, got that straightened out. We are now balanced. Moved those tandems way back. They're, I think, in the 17th hole now, so we're balanced out. And I just saw another one of my favorite sightings at this pilot. I pulled in and there was a flatbed at the fuel pump, a JB Hunt dedicated flatbed truck. And as I'm pulling in, as my nose is making the turn around, I'm noticing, okay, wait a second, I don't see anybody there and I don't see any fuel hoses going to the truck. That's always a sign. New drivers, if you're pulling into the fuel lane and you see a truck with nobody around it and you don't see fuel hoses going into the tanks, more than likely that's an asshole that's parked his truck right at the fuel pump. And sure enough, that's exactly what this guy did. So just left his truck sitting there at the fuel pump. Later on, I figured out he was inside. And this is a very busy pilot, and it's a very small pilot, and he's creating a complete cluster, you-know-what, in the entrance to the fuel lane because people keep pulling in behind him only to realize that it's a ghost truck and there's nobody there. And, now they have to try and back out to, get into another pump. In the meantime, I noticed when I went into the store, I noticed this huge dude just meandering, more like waddling, kind of back and forth in his Crocs, just going through the store, just picking up stuff, putting it back down. Huge dude. And I'm like, all right, I just made a mental note because, it was an unusual sighting of this big, huge dude. And of course now I'm at this scale and, having to weigh and reweigh and stuff. And, so I'm pulling all over the place. It takes time to do this, right? So I'm hanging out here for a while in the process. And I finally noticed this asshole waddle back out to his truck and couldn't give a shit. Didn't care about anything. Nothing. Then he gets into his truck. He pulls it forward, finally, parks it, and walks back into the store and leaves the damn truck again. Insane. I mean the nerve of people. This place is wide open for parking. As you can see right now, I'm parked on a alongside curb because I was adjusting my tandems. There's plenty of space that you can pull your truck over and park, but no, this guy just decides he owns the damn fuel island. It's unreal. It is unreal how many people there are that just don't give a shit about anybody but themselves. It's truly mind-boggling to me. But anyway, I try not to let it get to me. I just mention it because it's a terrible thing to do. And if you're one of the people doing it, stop it, please. You're an idiot. Stop. Yeah, that's it. So we're all set to go. We're going to head out. It occurred to me earlier in the day, one of the clips that I made when I was at the pilot in Rochelle, I was talking about that other driver that obviously didn't weigh the trailer that he dropped off for me to relay. And I had mentioned that he had 37,000 pounds on his tandems, on his trailer tires. So for you non-truckers out there, truck drivers, we get it immediately, but for those of you who don't drive trucks, I thought that probably should be explained a little bit. So I think everybody knows that trucks are regulated as far as their weight is concerned. That's why you see weigh stations on highways. And the way those laws work, actually fairly straightforward, unless you're talking about specialized and, all these different types of niche, whatever you want to call it, forms of trucking that require special permits. But what I'm talking about is just regular trucking, regular semi-trucks. And the requirements are that the truck with everything in it, the total truck, if it goes on a scale, it cannot exceed 80,000 pounds. So 80,000 pounds. That's the total truck. The other thing you have to watch are what they call bridge laws. and that has to do with how much weight is on each individual axle of a truck. And the way they distribute that 80,000 pounds on a conventional semi-truck is they put 34,000 pounds as the limit on the trailer tires, so those trailer tandems as they're called. Those two axles are in tandem, right? They're right next to each other essentially. So they are only allowed to have a maximum of 34,000 pounds. The drive axles, which are also two axles on the tractor that are very close together, they are allowed to have 34,000 pounds. So now you have the trailer at 34,000, you have the tractor drive tires at 34,000 pounds. Then you have the front axle that has what we call the steer tires. That front steer tire axle cannot weigh more than 12,000 pounds. So if you add those three together, 34 plus 34 plus 12, you have 80. That's your 80,000 pounds of combined axle weight or total vehicle weight. So you have to watch all of that. So not only do you have to make sure that your total truck isn't over the 80, you also have to make sure that each individual axle group is also not over their limits. And that's where that becomes important with that trailer that guy dropped with 37,000 pounds on the trailer axles. 3,000 pounds over on axles, DOT officers are not going to have much patience for that. I mean, they might cut you a little slack if you're 50 pounds or 100 pounds. Usually not. I wouldn't count on it. Usually if you're a pound over, you're screwed. But there are some that might give you a little bit of a pass, chalk it up to difference between scales or whatever. But when you're talking about 3,000 pounds, no, you're getting a ticket. And that goes on the CSA scores. So not only does that affect the driver's record, it also affects the carrier. In my case, Schneider. So if I get an overweight ticket like that, Schneider also gets dinged for that. And what that ends up doing is if a carrier's CSA score gets really bad, well, guess what? Now every single truck in the fleet across the entire country, as they approach weigh stations, the DOT officers at those weigh stations are going to see CSA scores, and they're going to say, Schneider looks like they have a pretty terrible score. We better pull them in and inspect them. That's what ends up happening. So now all of a sudden your whole fleet starts getting not only pulled in for weights, but also for inspections of the truck and inspections of your logs and it's opening a can of worms that you don't want to open. So it's really, really, really important to watch weights in trucking. So anyway, I just wanted to give that a little bit of an explanation. Hopefully that makes sense.
A little later. continue on the current road.
Proceed south on 5th Avenue South in 700 feet. Continue straight on 3rd Street South, then, after 444 feet, look for your destination.
Turn left on 5th Avenue South, then take the first right.